It's time for this week's waiver wire pickups. Now, I hope you guys won your first fantasy football playoff, and now we're in the semifinals. Unless you're in one of those weird leagues where you play week 17. Stop playing in week 17 championship games. It's terrible. The number one guy that we want to get is Cam Akers. I said it last week to pick him up. You know, hopefully maybe nobody knows that he was on the waiver wires. You definitely want to pick him up because he actually exploded this last week in fantasy football. Now, we already talked about this guy with Nelson Aguilar for the Raiders. You know, he's been pretty consistent over the past 3 weeks. He's actually done pretty well. He looked really well this last week with getting 100 yards and a touchdown. So if you're desperate for wide receiver, he's someone you can fill in. Another guy who's getting a ton of touchdowns, but not a ton of targets. In fact, I think he's only averaged about 4 targets a game, is Gabriel Davis for the Buffalo Bills. He's gotten, I think, a touchdown the past 3 games and then 4 out of the past 5. So he's just getting touchdowns. So if you're really desperate for wide receiver, also him for a fill-in. You guys see if Gus Edwards is still out there. I know we talked about Gus Edwards before, but see if he's out there. He could be somebody you could grab as well. The defense, it looks like available is probably going to be the Tennessee Titans. They're the ones I want to target unless you can somehow you can get the Rams, but most likely that team is snagged too because they face the Jets. But the Tennessee Titans are facing the Detroit Lions, who are going to be playing their backup quarterback because Stafford most likely will be out. So keep an eye on that. But the Tennessee Titans is what I'm looking to pick up this week. Now, one thing I want to give you guys for tips. For when you're in the playoffs, just stay with your studs, okay? I wouldn't recommend picking up somebody off the waiver wire system, especially someone I named, except for Cam Akers, to play this week, unless you're absolutely in a desperate need for it. You're in a really deep league. I would try to stay with whoever got you there, even if they had a bad week. For example, like Deontay Johnson did not have a good week this last week. He dropped a whole bunch of passes. But if he's your best option, you know, I'm going to play him over, like, let's say, Alshon Jeffrey, like I just said before. I'm not going to go down with Deontay Johnson on my bench or one of my studs on the bench. For example, like Miles Sanders this week. He was somebody that did not look good. A lot of people were talking about benching him. I actually kept him in my lineup, and he exploded. Now, it was one really big play, but that's what Sanders is good for. He's always broken really big plays. This just happened to be his longest career play of all time that he had. So you guys, basically just don't tilt when you're looking at your lineup, okay? Do your research. Make sure you're looking at weather. Make sure that's not a really bad weather game. You don't want to get caught in like a snowstorm or anything like that. You want to make sure that you're keeping an eye on all injuries at all times. You guys, that's it for the video. If you guys have any questions at all, leave a comment down below and I'll try to answer it for you. You guys, best of luck going into your semifinals this weekend, and I'll see you next week in the championship week. Ready?